Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. A lot of you have probably heard about the record-breaking auction. A copy of The Legend of Zelda for the NES sold at auction on Friday for $870,000. That's right, one simple video game. Plastic game in a box, sold for almost $1 million. Absolutely incredible. Now this was a Wata 9.0 factory sealed example in excellent condition. Beautiful copy of The Legend of Zelda factory sealed, but $1 million almost? Wow, that is absolutely crazy. Now, I sold my factory sealed copy of The Legend of Zelda for $80. Wow, I should have kept it. Now, the reason this copy of Legend of Zelda sold for so much, because it was a special copy. Now, I'm going to get to a little bit about the copy of Zelda I sold for $80, but I want to talk more about this auction first. Now, this auction was conducted by Heritage Auctions, and it was their first standalone video game signature auction by Heritage. Now, they've sold some games over the past, I don't know, year or two, and they've had some record-breaking sales, including Super Mario Bros. Factory sealed for $660,000 just back in April. But this was their first video game signature auction, first standalone video game auction. So really intriguing. Now, I've known for a few years now that Heritage was eventually going to start selling video games. Now, for years, they've sold coins, they've auctioned off comic books in China and all kinds of antiques, but they've only relatively recently gotten into video games. And I've written about Heritage Auctions for about a decade now for Antique Week, and I know it was only a matter of time before they got into selling video games. Now, this copy of The Legend of Zelda they sold was an early production run of Zelda, and which is just a variant. I don't really care that much about video game variants unless they're extreme examples. For example, NBA basketball for the Intellivision. This was Mattel's release, just the standard release. The exact same game, Sears released. Now this is a big variation. I do collect these kinds, when it's completely different. But just little, box and label variations, I don't care much about that. Although perhaps I should, because it can make a big difference in these types of auctions. So again, before I talk about my experience selling Zelda for 80 bucks, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this amazing auction. And I'm going to read the press release, their Heritage Auctions response to this amazing sale. So, I had a lot of confidence in this game, and yet I still feel like the reality of today's bidding exceeded my vision of how it would play out. Heritage Auctions video game specialist Valerie McClecky said, "Making history is never an easy thing. I'm just really proud we got to be part of this yet again." And the press release goes on to talk about how this was an early example of Zelda and why it is so rare. It is widely believed that the copy sold Friday is one of just 2 sealed NES TM copies graded by Wata. It is from a variant of the game that was produced for just a few months in the late 1987 before it was replaced by the REVA variant in early 1988. The NES-R variant was preceded by just one other variant, the NES TM variant, which is the first true production run. Blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're still with me after all that minutia, the bottom line is this was an early production run of Zelda with just a little minor variation. Whatever, it was a factory sealed Legend of Zelda in gorgeous condition, an iconic, amazing game. And I mean, this is early Legend of Zelda, early Super Mario Brothers. These are sort of the video game equivalent of Action Comics #1, or a Mickey Mantle rookie card, or a Honus Wagner rookie card, something like that. These are touchstones of popular culture, and I'm not at all surprised that these video games are selling for these astronomical prices here in 2021. But in the early 2000s, when I was out buying and selling games, it never would have occurred to me in a million years that a video game would sell for almost $1 million, and it is sure to break the million mark at some point. Now, let me get to my story of selling a factory sold copy of The Legend of Zelda for 80 bucks. back in the late 1990s and early 2000s, I was shopping at Funcoland and GameStop like crazy. It was Funcoland in the 1990s, a retail chain that sold used video games and new and used also. They sold new ones also. And then in the early 2000s, 2000 or 2001, it became GameStop. And they sold retro games, including NES stuff. And what they would do, they would have this Funcoland. I remember these catalogs, right? Remember this? Some of you that would shop back then. Legend of Zelda. I bought my copy for $9.99. I distinctly remember buying a factory sealed Legend of Zelda for $9.99. And I did look it up here in Funcoland. This is a 1999 Funcoland catalog. Zelda's listed in there for $9.99. And I remember this distinctly because it was a factory sealed version that I bought. Now, at GameStop / Funcoland at the time, they sold cartridge-only games, complete games, and factory-sealed games. It didn't matter. It was the same price. So if I would have bought a cartridge Legend of Zelda, either the gray or the gold cart, if they had it for sale for $9.99. If it was complete in the box, it would be $9.99. If it was the game and just the manual, $9.99. Factory sealed version of Legend of Zelda, $9.99, and that's what I paid, $9.99. Amazing. They didn't care. They just didn't want to bother with the minutia of pricing each variation of the game, and they certainly didn't worry about label variations or anything like that. Now, I have no idea if my copy of Legend of Zelda was an early production run. Who knew? I just knew I had a factory sealed Zelda. Now, a normal factory sealed Zelda recently that was graded by, I think it was another grading company like VGA, an 85 example, sold at auction for $25,000 on eBay. So my factory sealed Zelda that I sold for 80 bucks back in the day, maybe it would go for $25,000 now if I put it on eBay. I don't know. I just know that if I would have kept it, I could sell it for a whole lot more now. But yeah, it was really cool back in the day. As I've told you guys before, I would drive all over Dallas-Fort Worth to the different Funcolands and GameStops, and I would buy games that I could resell. I would buy just the common games that nobody really wanted that Funcoland and GameStop were selling for 99 cents or $2.99 or whatever. I would sell those to pawn shops for $5 each. There were certain pawn shops that were still paying $5 for NES games in the early 2000s and late 90s. And I would sell some of the more desirable games on eBay. Yeah, even in late 1990s and the early 2000s, you could make a profit selling games you would buy at game stores on eBay. For example, I found a lot of complete Super Nintendo games, role-playing games. Even back then, role-playing games commanded a premium. I would buy them. They were typically around $7.99 to $9.99 to $12.99 at Funcoland / GameStop. I would buy these and then put them on eBay, and they'd go for $20, $30, $40, $50. Even back then, the complete role-playing games were selling for relatively expensive, at least for the time. Nowadays, those RPGs are worth a whole lot more. And yeah, I would have kept them if I would have had any idea these games were going to be so valuable, but you just can't live your life saving everything, thinking everything is going to go up in price. Who knew? Now, I want to know from you guys if you had any experience back in the day buying games, factory sealed games at Funcoland or GameStop back when they carried retro games and they didn't care. They didn't differentiate between, cartridge only and factory sealed. And I also want to know from you guys what you think of these outrageous auction prices. It's crazy. Now, coming up soon, I'm going to be at a couple of different video game conventions. Video Game Summit in Chicago is July 17th. I will put a link in the description of this video for that. I will be there autographing books, meeting you guys, selling books, talking about YouTube and that kind of thing. Classic Game Fest, July 24th and 25th in Austin, Texas. I will be there. So I got a couple of back-to-back shows coming up, and I will put links in the videos with more information, in this video with more information. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for liking the video, and thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm closing in on 3,200 subscribers, and that is awesome. I'm really excited about that. All right, guys, we will talk to you in another video. If you're a fan of my work, you might want to consider supporting me on Patreon. For just a low fee each month, you get a lot of extra content. Another way to support the channel and my writing career is to buy books direct from me, including the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, the Classic Home Video Game Series. It's like an encyclopedia set. And this massive bad boy, the NES Omnibus Volume 1 A through L. I will put links in the description of this video where you can buy books direct from me and where you can support me on Patreon. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.